Greetings adventurers, this is Cause of the Wormforge, and today I'm going to show you a guide on how to be an unarmed badass using a build I call the Shield Maiden, which is focused on one-handed unarmed, block, and the evasion skills to beat down our opponents with our fists, while also being an unstoppable bulwark on the battlefield. This is going to be using Lorerim 4.0, one of the best mod lists available to install for free through Wabbajack. This is a mod list that completely overhauls all aspects of the game, including visuals and animation, combat and progression, and utilizes the mod Overhaul Requiem to enhance the game and make it 1,000 times more immersive and roleplay oriented. I actually used to make videos for Skyrim a long time ago, and even still every year I make sure to check out the latest mod lists, tweak them to my own liking. Lorerim is one of the few exceptions in the fact that I have made almost no alterations to this mod list from how complete and comprehensive it is. Basically, the only thing I've changed is the MCO moveset, which you'll see on screen. That is going to be Smooth's latest For Honor moveset, which again, I'll include a link for that in the description below alongside Wabbajack if you want to pick up the Lorerim mod list. But we're going to be sticking with pretty much everything that's going to be part of Lorerim baseline. So you're going to experience the same things I am. You can use the build exactly as I am showing in the video. And unarmed is shockingly very viable in Lorerim, to the point where we will legitimately become a force of nature that can tackle on even the hardest bosses and enemies with our insane damage output. Now, in today's video, we're going to cover the following things: how to start out as a shield fist-wielding Nord warrior, the level progression for our character up to 25, a really fun quest line for brawler type characters, and then gear recommendations that are actually going to help you out to progress through the early stages of the game. I'm going to cover the full progression from level 1 to 25, which again is the early to mid game within Lorerim. After which the build is going to become a lot more flexible, and I'll give some recommendations on what spells to take and how to further the build in the late game. Now, there is going to be a link in the description below that has the full write-up on the level progression as well as the gear progression. That way you can quickly refer back to it if you're having any trouble looking at what perks you want to take at what levels, etc, etc. There is a heck of a lot to cover, but I promise you it's so much fun to play unarmed in Lorerim, and hopefully you'll enjoy this little adventure that we go on. Like and subscribe if you want to see more Skyrim content like this, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the build, or if you want to see other types of builds on this channel. Alright, so let's get into character creation. I'm going to show you guys how we're going to actually build our character starting out. And this is going to be, again, for a playstyle that is focused heavily on blocking and punching our way to victory. So this is Eris, the Shield Maiden. She is going to be a Nord who grew up in the cold reaches of East March. She had grown up in the city of Windhelm, working under a blacksmith who was her father, and spending a lot of time with the Stormcloaks. She really got to bond with them and care for them. And really, when the Civil War happened, she wanted to support Ulfric's Stormcloak and the independence of the Nords, who had gone to war with the Imperial Legion because of the banning of the worship of Talos. And so she would be standing up, fighting for her allies as a proud Stormcloak, but due to her reckless and brash nature, she ended up getting into a very, very risky siege where a lot of her allies had followed her on a reckless charge and died as a result of that. So she got benched by Galmar Stonehammer, put on the sidelines, said, hey, you can't work with the Stormcloaks anymore, you're too hot-headed, and unfortunately went off on her own to become an adventurer, to temper her skills in battle. So yeah, we're going to be playing as a Nord character. Nords get a +10 to their block, heavy armor, light armor, one-handed smithing, and a +15 to their two-handed. They make great martial characters. If you want to play someone who's going to bash heads in, be real tanky, Nords are your typical go-to, outside of orcs, of course. And then, because this is Requiem, each race gets some pretty unique traits that are going to make them stand out from the others. So Nords get frost resistance, they get an increased passives on shouts, and yeah, they're just really great warrior type characters. So resistance to frost is going to be very helpful against Draugr wights. Anyone using code magic against us, that usually saps your stamina, so being able to mitigate that damage, super big for fighting in melee. And then of course, shouts are going to be our later end game focus, so having that boost to shouts and frost resist are very helpful. Alright, so once we're loaded in, we can pick a bird sign. We're going to be going with the Sign of the Warrior. This is going to give us 50 extra health, an additional 10% damage on melee weapons, as well as 5 armor pen that gets doubled once we master weapon skill. And then we also get 10 additional damage on our unarmed strikes. This is very powerful to have. The +50 health early game makes a huge difference to surviving attacks that would otherwise one-shot you. And the additional unarmed strike damage is going to help us as well. All right, so let's talk about skills. Now, we have 3 major skills and 6 minor skills, of which choosing something as a major skill is going to increase it by 10, and then choosing something as a minor skill is going to increase it by 5. This is very important for the early game because, as I said, we want to get our one-handed to level 50 as soon as possible. Getting your skills to specific tiers, 25, 50, 75, 100, is going to unlock access to new and very powerful perks more often than not. So getting our one-handed to 50 as soon as possible is going to give us access to Power Strike. So that way our power attacks are going to do tons of damage. We're going to be able to obliterate our enemies in the early game, specifically bandits, which is most of the enemies we're going to fight. And so that's going to be one of our major skills. Block and evasion are going to be our other 2 major skills, as these are essential for our survival as well as for our damage in the early to mid game. Block is going to be very useful against any sort of melee based enemy. We can bash so that we can cancel their attacks, and then we can also bring up our shield to block arrows and to take substantially less damage. Evasion is going to give us access to dodge so that we can get out of the way of huge attacks from things like giants and dwarf centurions. And then it's also going to give us tons of damage from things like dexterity and flanker. Our minor skills are going to be alteration, destruction, enchanting, restoration, alchemy, and speech. The reason why these are going to be our minor skills, we actually are taking more minor skills than we need. We really only care about alteration, which is going to be our supportive magic for most of the run. We care about alchemy, which around levels 20 to 25 is when we're going to start investing in alchemy, and we're going to use that to craft tons of really powerful potions. And then enchanting, which we're going to finally use after level 25, is going to make up for most of our end game gear. We're going to be able to enchant it ourselves, and we're going to get some very powerful benefits because unarmed damage is a custom enchant. So we're not going to be able to find lots of late game stuff that have that unarmed damage bonus, but we can enchant it upon multiple pieces of gear to really give us a huge boost to our damage. Additionally, speech is great for shouts. We are going to be using some restoration and destruction magic, although as I said earlier, these minor skills are completely irrelevant. How leveling up works in Lorerim is that you're going to beat up your enemies. You're going to kill enemies. You're going to complete quests. This is going to give you EXP. It's not like the base Skyrim system where you just punch somebody in the face until your one-handed becomes 100. No, you have to repeatedly level up, and every time you level up, you can increase your skills and get a perk point, at which point you can progress your character. You are locked until level 25. You cannot get your skills up to level 75. You have to be at least level 25 until you can get to that 3rd tier of level 75 for things like your evasion and your alteration, getting expert spells, as well as getting access to combat reflexes, which are going to be a really huge boost to our kit and our damage. And then to get to level 100, skill level 100 for anything, you're going to have to be minimum level of 50. So we're not even going to talk about that for this video. Level 50 is late game, end game. This is when you're going to be doing all of the crazy Dragonborn DLC content, as well as fighting Alduin and other things like that. And maybe I'll make another video on late game and end game, but for the most part, we're going to be talking about the early to mid game discussion of using this build, which I think is going to be very helpful for you guys. Now, we also can pick a faith. We're going to be choosing Talos. As a Nord, we have a stalwart belief in Talos, and that's one of the reasons why we're going at war with the Imperial Legion, because of the White Gold Concordat banning the worship of Talos, which is unacceptable to us. There are, of course, other religions, faiths for the princes, the Daedric princes, that are very powerful. All right, and then after that, the last thing we can pick is going to be our traits. So these are very similar to Fallout New Vegas' traits, where basically they have a benefit, but then they also have a detriment. So it really depends on what you want to take. So for example, Bulwark is going to give us 200 armor and 10% damage reflection, physical damage reflection, but we're going to drain an additional stamina per second while sprinting and 0.25 stamina while running. This is brutal. It's really hard to justify running this unless you have some sort of insane boost to your stamina, which you can overcome late game, but early game, it's kind of too brutal to justify taking Bulwark, in my opinion. The one that we are going to be taking today is going to be Jack of all spells. This is going to be a trait that gives us 20% better spellcasting and 20% longer spellcasting for novice, apprentice, and adept level spells, but our expert and master level spells are going to be 20% weaker and shorter. Now, Most of the magic we're going to be casting is going to be Novice, Apprentice, and Adept. We don't get access until Expert level spells until minimum of 25, and it's only going to be for the School of Alteration. Taking the hit here is going to be worth it because late game we're going to actually just focus on shouts. That's going to be a lot more effective than Alteration, but nonetheless Alteration magic is very essential to our kit. And having Akato's Recital and Transmute Muscles, which I'm going to talk about later, those are going to be core to our setup, so it's worth taking Jack of all spells for a boost to those. Also, what we're going to be taking is going to be the Blighted Fists for an additional 10 unresistible disease damage to targets. This has no downside because it's a very simple ability, and we're going to be taking this to boost our unarmed damage. We do have the option of Unbound Hands. If you do not plan on wearing gloves, which I'm going to show you a really amazing glove later on that might make you want to change your mind on this. If you don't want to wear gloves, this is going to give plus 30 flat damage to your unarmed attacks. It's also going to make your spells 15% stronger, so very powerful. It fits the theme for a Khajiit type of character, but we're going to be playing a badass Nord who's lifting a shield, who's wearing a lot of armor, so we're going to go ahead and not take Unbound Hands because we're going to use some gauntlets later on. Alright, and then we're going to be playing on the classic mode, which is the main base difficulty. If you're new to Lorerim and Requiem, you can play on the Naktid difficulty, but we're going to be playing on Quantity. Make sure to grab all the food here. And then we're going to talk to the dragon friend here, and he's going to give us a starting point. If you want an easy start, just pick your own home. You'll have lots of money and food and items to have starting out. But we're going to go ahead and just do a regular start at an inn. And we're going to pick the Bee in the Bar because we want to start in Riften. I'm going to show you guys some awesome early game gear to get. Before we walk through this door, though, I do want to point out your major skills will define what sort of starting equipment we have. So because we chose evasion block one-handed, we have a hide cuirass of the minor squire, we have a hide shield of resist frost, and we have an iron sword of souls. So make sure to equip those items. That's going to help us out a lot. And then for our starting skills, we're going to be taking hand to hand, which is going to increase our unarmed damage by 25, as well as weapon mastery, which is going to increase our unarmed damage by a further 20%. And then this might be a little bit of an unusual pick, but we're going to go into restoration as our third perk point. And that is so we can get access to Circle of Strength for stamina regen, as well as Wild Healing. This is a spell that heals 37 points to the caster, and then 37 hit points to a random target. It's terrible in combat, because it might heal your enemies, but outside of combat, this is the best way to heal your character early game, and this is going to save us a heck of a lot of healing potions and healing poultices. Alright, so we're starting off here in Riften. We are going to immediately pop a hot beef stew, because we're going to run into the Riften Ratway, and we're going to go ahead and get on into the action immediately. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and make our way over into the Riften Ratway. Before we do that, make sure to favorite and equip your fists. It's kind of funny, but we do have an unarmed weapon in our inventory, so you can favorite this. You can easily access your fists very quickly, and we can also look at our damage. We're dealing 71 damage on a hit, which compared to our iron sword is significantly higher. And we're going to jump into the Riften Ratway because there is a very easy Ring of Recuperation we can get. So you're going to want to rush on over here. Kill this guy immediately. This guy's out of stamina, so he can't block us anymore. And this gentleman here, Horbizer, is going to give us the Ring of Recuperation we're looking for. So we're just going to go ahead and kill him. Oh, he's dodging. Oh, not dodging enough, though. So there it is, the Ring of Rejuvenation. Now this is a random spawn on what type of Ring of Regen it's going to be, but regardless, it's going to give you stamina regeneration anywhere between 100% to 170%, maybe even 200% if you get really lucky. This one is a Ring of Rejuvenation, so it's giving us 140 regen, which is amazing. So we're going to go ahead and quit that, as well as the leather bracers, and we're pretty much set for the low levels. You know, between levels 1 and 5, this Ring of Regeneration is going to carry us really hard in terms of giving us good sustain, stamina sustain. Stamina regen is our lifeblood, because if you ever run out of stamina in the middle of a fight, oh, make sure to grab that axe. You can sell it for money.
Mercy.
Mercy. No mercy for you. Now, there's also a key on this guy in the rat works, so we can actually get our first follower very easily by grabbing that key, making our way over here, and then opening this cage. And here is Scritch, our little rat, our little skeever friend. Boom. It is that easy, and we already have a follower. So that's the kind of idea of how we want to start our run with the Ring of Recuperation. We're going to basically partaking in the Fists of Fury questline, which is part of Lorerim. It's this custom questline for an underground arena and these brawling rings, which is actually really freaking awesome. So now for the Fists of Fury quest that I was just talking about, we're going to need to take on some brawls. We have to win 3 brawls and then sleep for a day, and we're going to then be able to unlock the quests, at which point we can enter the underground arenas. And so to do that, we're going to talk to this guy.
What can I do for you, friend? Not me. You matched. Here we go.
And we're going to brawl this guy.
Come on, let's see what you're made of. This is what you want, huh? Drive that snow back.
All right.
I don't believe it. I guess you were right. I guess I shouldn't boast so much.
This is also a great way to get some money. All right, and then after that, we're gonna want to make our way over to Whiterun's. We can take the carriage here, and we're gonna want to scrap Uthgerd the Unbroken.
100 gold says I knock your hide to the ground.
I'll take you on. Let's brawl.
Just fists. Come on.
So she is very strong, but thankfully, due to the unarmed animations being really awkward for enemies to use.
Do your worst. That's your best, huh? Now that's what I call a punch. You got me.
All right, we get some free gold, and we also get ourselves an immediate follower.
You're someone who can get things done. I like that.
You put up a good fight. Now follow me. I need your help.
Let's not waste any time.
And it's that easy. Now we have a really strong follower, as well as some gold, and we are well on our way to completing 2 out of 3 brawls. All right, and then once we're actually inside Whiterun, we're going to want to talk to Carlota. We're going to ask her if someone's giving her trouble. She's going to tell us about Mikhail.
Perhaps you've heard of me.
And we're going to tell him, hey, leave Carlota alone.
Carlotta put you up to this, didn't she?
And we could persuade him, we could pay him off, but what we're going to do is punch his face in.
Take that from you. Come on, let's see what you're made of.
Well, that was a good dodge.
You're tougher than you look. Carlotta
And
won't have to
now
worry about
we
me.
have succeeded in our 3 brawls. All we have to do is go to sleep for the day, and on the next day we are going to go ahead and get ourselves an invitation to the underground arenas. And gearing up is kind of the most important thing for the early game, especially playing a character that has very little range.
That's the best you can do.
Okay, she just leveled up mid-fight. That is terrifying. But we got Uthgerd here to carry us. Let's see. Oh shit. I heard one of the guards shoot the arrow, and I thought he shot an arrow, so I dropped my guard there. And I took an arrow to the face, but thankfully we have enough health that it's not going to matter too much. So, big priority for early game, like stat-wise, is getting things that are going to increase our health. So, food buffs, for example. We had 8, the hot beef stew, I believe, that gave us plus 50 max HP. We're still riding off that buff. And then our hide curious is giving us an extra 20 HP. The warrior stone giving us an extra 50 HP. So we have 280 HP right now, which really helps us to tank these big hits that would otherwise, like, straight up one-shot us. This guy had enchanted boots of waning fire. Amazing. 20% less fire damage. Really nice to have. Early game. So yeah, this is a great spot for early game loot. The Whitewatch Tower here, as well as the unmarked location that was to the north above Whiterun that we just passed. All right, so let's talk about level progression. Early game level progression for Eris, our shield maiden, our melee unarmed character, is going to look like this. We're prioritizing one-handed as much as we can. So at the moment, it is level 40, and by the time we hit level 7, it's going to be level 50, where we can finally take the powerful strike feature that is going to give us a huge boost to our power attack damage. We are going to kind of have to struggle to fit, what perks we want to take between levels. I'm going to give you an exact level progression and breakdown of what perks you want to take depending on what level you are. That way you have pretty easy guidance that you can follow. If you want to have a smooth level progression, our attribute spread is going to be 2 stamina, 1 health, 2 magicka. That's the sort of ratio we're looking at. So every 2 levels you're taking stamina, every 3rd level you're taking health, every 4th and 5th level you're taking magicka as your upgrades. You really want to have stamina to be able to attack a lot. You really want to have magicka because later on we're going to use alteration magic to enhance our combat abilities quite a bit. And then of course we also want health because that makes us tankier and gives us better survivability over the course of our fights. All right, so at level 5, I'm going to show you guys the first 4 perks that we're going to be investing in. So at level 2, you want to definitely prioritize penetrating strikes. This is going to make our power attacks cost 30% less, and they are going to have 30% armor pen. So we're going to have a much easier time dealing with armor targets at the moment. Your unarmed strikes, they're going to do almost nothing to heavily armored targets, but once you get penetrating strikes, you can power attack them in the back of the head, and it's going to chunk them pretty heavily. At level 3, we're going to want to take improved blocking. So that'll let us bring up our shield, block a little bit more damage in melee. It's going to also make us take less elemental damage as well, which is really, really helpful. Especially against some enemies, even in the early game bandits, they might have tricksters who can cast magic, and that's going to hurt a heck of a lot if you get hit by something like a firebolt. All right, at level 4, we're going back into one-handed. Again, you'll see that we're prioritizing our damage very early on because we want to be able to just quickly one-shot enemies, specifically ranged enemies who are the biggest threat to an evasion-based character such as this. So we are immediately going for powerful charge at level 4. This is going to give us access to our sprint attack, which has a 50% crit chance. So sprint attack and sprint power attack, these are your biggest tools for opening into a fight, taking down an enemy right off the bat, and then making sure that things are going to start off in your favor. And then at level 5, we want to go into, surprisingly, the destruction tree. We're just going to take 1 point in novice destruction, and the reason why we're doing this is because it gives us access to Circle of Entropy, which is a really powerful tool for magicka regeneration outside of combat. This is going to basically give us infinite magicka outside of combat for the purposes of casting the wild healing to heal ourselves, and I think it's a really important quality of life that we take early on. We're also going to take Fiery Touch. This will give us a good fire damage based spell to fight trolls, to fight ice rates, and also just to deal with enemies who are just holding their block up too much. All right, so as soon as we come back to town, after we've rested and we've won our 3 brawls, we're going to get an invitation to fight from the courier. And if we open this up, it's going to say, "I've heard around that you're quite the fighter in Skyrim. We need more people like you here. Too many milk drinkers these days. Since you seem like the fighting type, I'll let you in on something. If you want some more action, there is a brawling tournament that is happening in Skyrim. We'll see how good you actually are. If you want in on the action, talk to any of these people. Maul in Riften, Falion in Morthal, and Naranye in Windhelm." And so, as soon as we get this invitation, we now have access to 3 different brawling tournaments across Skyrim. We're going to start off with Maul and Riften, then make our way over to Windhelm, then make our way over to Morthal. But yeah, this is going to give you plenty to do in the early game to level up your character and to get some experience actually using unarmed combat. So that'll definitely be awesome, and let's go jump into that.
I don't know you. You and Riften looking for... So, you're here to fight down in the rat way. Look good. Now shut up and get out of my face.
All right, and here we are.
I trust you're not planning any trouble. What can I do for you, friend?
I'm here for the fighting tourney.
Sure, provided you have the coin.
Here,
Come on, let's see what you're made of.
I challenge you. And we're gonna go ahead and start with the first guy, who is a drow, not a drow, Jesus Christ, a dark elf, Brachus.
I think you may have wasted your money, friend.
Let's go, you filthy Dunmer.
Got time to end this? Give it your best.
We're just gonna punch him in the face. And we just front kicked him. Look at that damage, 158. Because we have the armor penetration from our fists. And this guy was super easy. Alright, and now we fight the Rift's champion, Gion the Fists. Who used to be that homeless dude that was in the Ratway that gave us the Ring of Recuperation. But now he actually leads this arena, which is pretty cool, I think.
I'm drunk. If you're looking for a challenge, you've come to the right place. Here we go. Give up while you still can.
Oof.
What do you want?
Get wrecked. Oh,
If you're
alright,
looking
he bugged
for a
out.
challenge, you've come to the right
For whatever reason, he bugged out, but he's one shot.
Wait, I can still fight. No, I can't.
Whoa.
What are you staring at?
Alright, a little bit buggy. It's Skyrim. Granted, things always break. But we were able to succeed in this short quest.
You fight.
That was a good fight.
You know, you ain't so bad. Here, take this.
And from defeating the arena champion, we get the Gloves of the Pugilist, which is going to be our second piece of important gear for the early game. This is going to increase our unarmed strikes to do 10 additional damage. So right now, at the moment, our unarmed attacks, they do 90 damage, which is crazy. So we're actually able to take on a lot of low-level bandits with relative ease.
Very well. Good luck out
So we get a nice hefty chunk of gold, 650 gold, and a lot of EXP from completing that. And then we can make our way on over to Windhelm, which is where the next arena is.
Send someone over.
Right, so we're here in Windhelm, inside the New Genus Corner Club, and we're going to sit down and talk to Naranye.
Come see me in the marketplace tomorrow. You won't find better prices in all of the... Yes,
I heard there was a
I
fighting
know.
tourney here.
I see in your eyes that you think I jest. Here, now go away.
And she's going to give us a note for the arena in Eastmarch.
Around the edges. You feeling all right? Huh? All right then.
Alright, so the Brawlers camp is located east of Windhelm, but something that we can also do is join the Bloodworks. So from the Palace of the Kings, we can go over here this way, we can enter the Bloodworks, and we can actually partake in arena fights from here.
I heard the gourmet is hiding out some... Great. Some new blood. Okay, let's see what you can do. Head to the pit when you think you're ready.
So this is kind of like the arena in Oblivion. It doesn't seem to progress as far as I can tell. You're just going to fight random bandits. So occasionally they'll be very strong and occasionally they'll be very weak. But this is a really easy way to get both experience and gold. So I recommend entering the Bloodworks so that you can train your character up a bit. You know, you can give even more roleplay that they are fighting against just a wide variety of different warriors from Skyrim and getting more experience in battle. So we got a level 3 here. This will be easy. So we'll just headbutt her face in. Victory! And then we can head back for our reward. But yeah, this is a very easy and very safe way to level up your character if you're playing on a Dead is Dead run. It's definitely worth playing it safe. That way you could take on the much more difficult bandit dungeons once you have upgraded yourself to get a little bit more survivability, because right now we have a lot of damage but we don't have a whole lot of survivability, and we're gonna get a lot of that survivability between levels 8 and 15.
Gold solves most problems, doesn't it?
Alright, so now let's talk about our level progression between level 6 and 10. Those next 5 levels, as I said, we want to prioritize our one-handed, getting that up to level 50 by level 7. So at level 6, we're going to go ahead and take Strong Grip, which is going to be the block perk. That's going to give us less shield weight, so we can move around faster, but it also increases our armor rating from our shield. We block 40% more damage, and arrows that hit the shield deal no damage whatsoever. So strong grip's really important, especially when you're fighting those bandits, dealing with those range bandits. If you block the attack with your shield, you take 0 damage, which is huge to your survivability against range. And then at level 7 is when we're going to go ahead and take Powerful Strike. This is 20% more power attack damage and a 10% crit hit chance. So basically, when we're doing our sprinting power attack, we have a 60% crit chance, and we deal an additional 20% more damage on top of power attacks already dealing an additional 50% damage. So with our one-handed attacks dealing 95 damage on a crit, we can probably do around 300 damage to a target that's not wearing any sort of armor or doesn't have a high armor rating. So we're gonna pretty much at this point be able to do our sprinting power attack. And I did change the animation for it so that when I'm wielding a shield, I'm using my actual shield. It's not too hard to do if you want to edit the DAR files for that. But with our sprinting power attacks, we are going to be able to obliterate our foes. It's up to you at this point if you want to invest further into blocking or further into evasion. We're going to be taking our evasion perks a lot later into the build. And the reason for that is because we don't really need evasion until we're taking on high mid-game enemies. Things like giants and dwarven centurions, that's when we're going to want our dodge. That's when we're going to need our damage from vexing flanker and dexterity and light armor training. Up until then, we really don't need evasion all that much. Fighting the bandits, we need blocking more so than evasion. So that's why I recommend going for experience blocking here. This is going to give us 50% more block, as well as increasing our stamina a little bit when we block hits, so that we can tank a hell of a lot better. Level 9, we're going to want grappling, which is going to be a one-handed perk here. This is going to make it so our unarmed power attacks stagger enemies, 50% chance to stagger, 10% chance to disarm. Again, this really helps out fighting bandits, which are going to be our main source of EXP and loot in the early game. Also very helpful against draugrs as well. And then at level 10, we are going to be taking an alchemy perk. But not just any alchemy perk. We're not taking alchemical lore. No, we're taking drunken combat. This is a busted perk. It's going to remove the blur from alcohol so that you can actually drink alcohol for its benefits. We get a stamina regeneration of 2 stam per second, plus 10% more damage with melee attacks. And then also we get the benefits of alcohol, which increases our max HP typically. So now that we've taken drunken combat, we can simply imbibe ourselves in whatever alcohol we have. If we have Altanor wine, we can increase our max HP by 75, which is tremendous, absolutely huge. This is really, really big. Level 10 is going to be where our character has a lot better sustain for their stamina, so you can fight a lot longer, you can fight more enemies at the same time, and we're going to be quite a bit tankier as well, so things are looking pretty good at level 10. And also, don't forget to go into your custom skills, go to your destiny points, make sure to take the perks here. We're going to want to go the middle tree because we want monk as our capstone. And so these aren't very useful, admittedly. Like, you could go endurance and thief if you want, but either way, make sure that you get up to battle spirit, because eventually we're going to want to take monk, which is going to give us 50 bleed damage over 5 seconds on our attacks. It's a pretty good capstone for our character, who is going to be making lots of attacks, and battle spirit is huge too once we can get to this. That's crazy good. All right, so we've made it to the camp.
Hello. Of course. Look around.
And now we can scrap everyone here.
Hello there.
You're tougher than you look. Yes? Well, next time.
Well, That was an unpleasant bit of business. Yes?
You won't get away with that.
Is someone
Can't
there?
give up while you still can.
Whoa. That was an accident.
Spare you for now.
That was an accident. I may have fucked up. Alright, there we go. Whew. Man, I thought I broke that quest for a second there. Our fists are too powerful.
You look strong. The strong and honorable always carry the blessing of the Nine. You call yourself a Nord?
Come on, she's not so tough.
I love a good fight.
Is that all? 400 gold, even less than Windhelm. That lady is definitely a lot stronger than Gian of the Fist. So I definitely recommend coming here after you do Riften first. And then now all we have left is Morthal. To mention this, but at level 10 we're actually strong enough that we can take on the entrance to Ralbithar, which has a particular NPC, Alain Dufont, who's going to have some really powerful early to mid game enchanted light armor for us. And so from Windhelm you're going to want to make your way over to the mountains down to the southwest of Windhelm, and up these steps is going to be the Dwemer ruin called Ralbithar, which is going to be the perfect place for us to get some gear. And we are going to rush down the bandits here. Oh, we're going for that guy. And he still managed to get a shot on us, which is very, very unfortunate.
Die already so I can take your stuff. Like the bite of a flea.
Alright, so inside Ralbithar is going to be that NPC we want. We just got to take care of some bandits inside. We're going to need Uthgrim for this. Oh yeah, there's a range guy up there. So we're gonna keep this dude on us.
We are routed. Fool. Someone there?
Oh, Jesus. And after you've taken care of all the bandits, you're gonna see there's still an NPC left. This gentleman, Alain Dufont, who's got some spiffy
I
hair
don't know how you made it
and
this
some nice
far,
elven armor,
but you'll go no farther.
and he's just chilling. But now, once he stands up out of that chair, we're gonna scrap him.
Just stand still.
Oh, Lord. He hits like a truck, so make sure to punch him in the face before he gets up. But yeah, once we kill him, we get access to his equipment. Oh god, there's some audio bugging out somewhere. That's better. And then once we get his equipment, we have Elaine's Elven Boots, Cuirass, and Gauntlets. The boots are going to give us 80 stamina. This is a stamina rank 2 enchantment. Absolutely bonkers to be able to get this early in the game. His Cuirass gives us 10% magic resist, which is very nice. And then his Gauntlets give us 10 unarmed damage, which to be honest is not any stronger than the Gloves of the Pugilist that we already had. but still very valuable nonetheless because the material it's made of is elven armor. So with this armor set, we're going to have 320 armor rating, not including our shield. So we're actually quite a bit tankier now. And yeah, that's going to be the perfect set of gear for you to have in the early to mid game. So by this point, you should be feeling pretty strong. We got 220 stamina, 295 HP while we are under the effects of our alcohol. And getting alcohol is pretty easy. There's lots of bandit encampments where you're going to find Ultra Noir wine. That gives 75 health, which is pretty much the go-to that I mainly use. And then as we're progressing further, I'm going to show you guys a really strong pair of gauntlets you can get once you have saved up about 5,000 gold. Alright, so once you've saved up enough gold, we're going to make it over to the beautiful city of Raven Rock. Not really city, more like settlement. And we're going to go ahead and buy ourselves an amazing pair of gauntlets. They're called the Gauntlets of the Horny Fist.
Want to
I'm
buy
not sure
anything?
why,
Just what you see here.
but they're really freaking good. And so you can see here, the vendor Fethis Aelor is going to be selling these gauntlets. They do 25 additional damage and 10 extra fire damage. This is the reason why we didn't take Unbound Hands. These gauntlets, they have an armor rating of 60, but on top of that, they give us an extra 35 points of damage. And 10 of that damage is fire, which is really strong. Fire is actually a very useful damage type against things like trolls and other sorts of enemies that are weak to fire. But then also that boost to magical damage is very substantial against enemies that have armor. So that 10 extra fire damage, that'll be getting through heavily armored enemies that don't have fire resistance, which is really nice. So we're going to go ahead and buy that. And yeah, let's put them on. So with these gauntlets, we take a look at our damage. We're sporting 119 points of damage on our unarmed attacks, which is absolutely amazing. This is dealing way more damage than any of our other weapons that we might have. And when we power attack, we are going to be chunking down our enemies really well. Look at that damage. 478 damage with 2 power attacks. So yeah, pretty much at this point, we are going to be able to power attack our way to victory against most enemies, as long as we can outlast them, kite them out, and maneuver our way past large groups and things like that. Anyway, at this point, we do want to make sure to join with the Companions Guild. This is going to give us a lot of opportunities to take on quests where we can raid bandit dungeons and get money from that and good gear. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys the level progression from levels 11 to 15. We are going to be prioritizing now alteration. So hopefully by level 13 you get your alteration over to 50. It should be very easy to do. We are prioritizing one-handed from those earlier levels, and it's very perk heavy in investment into block and one-handed in the early game. So once we get to level 11, it's where we can finally start taking alteration magic and incorporating that into our build for survivability and damage. Up until then, our build is so perk intensive that we don't have the space to fit in alteration magic. So level 11, we're going to take novice alteration. We are going to take open novice lock as well as oak flash. Honestly, we don't really need open novice lock. We can punch chests open. So if you want to take something else like candlelight, you're more than welcome to. These don't matter too much. You will hardly use either of these. Once we get to level 12, we're going to take Apprentice Alteration. This needs 25 Alteration, which you should have way more than by this point. And we're going to be taking Okato's Recital. This is an incredibly powerful spell. You basically cast it with another non-concentration spell in your left hand, and then whenever you enter combat, that spell automatically is cast without you having to equip it. And the cost of the spell is reduced by your alteration skill, and it's halved if you're wearing clothing. Unfortunately, we're not wearing clothing, we're going to wear light armor, but we do get to reduce the cost of those spells by our alteration skill level, which is very nice to have. And just the auto casting in combat is what makes Okato's Recital such a valuable spell to have. So we're going to take that alongside Stone Flesh, which is going to increase our armor rating by 150. And at the moment, at level 12, we are going to learn Akato's Recital, and we're going to cast it alongside Stone Flesh. That way when we enter combat, we will have the benefits of a Stone Flesh spell on our body. Now once we hit the level 13, however, that's where we hit our nice little power spike. Adept Alteration is going to give us access to Adept Magic spells for the Alteration tree, where we can finally get Transmute Muscles on self. So with the current alteration that we had, which I think was like around 60, our Fortifying Health is going to give us 28 extra HP, and it's going to give us half that as unarmed damage and carrying capacity for 201 seconds. So this spell is going to give us a big boost to unarmed damage depending on our alteration score, and it's very valuable to have. With Akato's Recital, we can auto cast Transmute Muscles on self every time we enter combat. Going to give us a bump to HP, a bump to damage, big, very huge to have. Additionally, we can either take Open Adept Lock if you want to get more money from chests. We can take Grow if we want to increase our damage and damage mitigation by a little bit. But actually what I recommend is taking Corrode. This is going to be an adept level spell that is going to reduce enemy physical damage and armor rating by a substantial value for about 100 seconds. So this depends on your alteration score. At the moment, we can reduce enemy physical damage by 14% and their armor rating by 140, which is basically giving us free armor pen. So you cast Corrode on specifically really sturdy targets, so like maybe a very high level bandit lord or a Draugr death lord. You cast Corrode on them and then you power punch them, power attack them in the face, and just one shot them. Super awesome and amazing ability to have. All right, so at level 14 we are going to be taking agility. This is our first perk in evasion. We're getting it quite late, I do admit, but the reason why we're getting it so late is now our light armor actually is going to be very relevant. We're going to be dealing with potentially much stronger enemies, things like giants or dwarven centurions, and we're going to need access to dodge and agile spellcasting and the bonus damage from things like vexing flanker and dexterity. And so what we're going to actually prioritize first, since we just got access to adept level magic for alteration, we want agile spellcasting. That way we have no spell cost penalty for casting spells in light armor. All right, so let's go ahead and talk to Alain inside of Morthal.
I have done no such. Beyond
I'm
that,
not accusing
I
you of
seek
anything,
only to
old
be
man.
left alone to pursue my.
I was
Not
told to
many
come talk to
see
you,
me.
but the brawling
Yes,
tournament.
I know just soon.
And after you talk to
Yeah, the
Alain, he
summoning
is
circle
going to
in the
have you
marsh.
go outside to a summoning circle where he will conjure up some undead warriors for you to fight. So this one you definitely want to be a little bit higher level on. You're going to want to be at least level 10 to 15 before you take on this brawling tournament. The other two you can do pretty low level. Alright, so we're over at Falion Summoning Stone. Don't mind that little thing in the bottom right that says Shoki Bindings. That's just stuck there for some reason.
There are some experiments the college frowns on.
What am I fighting? I don't see any warriors here.
Of course.
Yes?
Am I supposed to fight you?
They will sing stories of this day. Need something? They will sing stories of this day. Come on. Nothing. Mercy.
Yes?
Ha! Why don't you put up a proper fight? Oh, now that one must have hurt.
At last,
Let's do this, champion.
you must die.
Ha! Why don't you put up a proper fight?
Free again.
Yes?
Are you going to summon anything
I
else?
expected more. Well, I'm glad that. Here, take this.
Alright, and that's going to be it for the Fist of Fury questline. It's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward. You can do this anywhere between the level ranges of like 5 to 15. We're over leveled for the last Morthal quest because I was doing a bunch of other things. But, again, great thing for you to do. In the meanwhile, I do recommend for level progression clearing out bandit encampments, taking on all of the companions quest line. That's going to be a great quest for our unarmed character. It really matches the type of work we want to be doing. A lot of mercenary work, just fighting bandits, killing monsters and all big beasties and other sorts of things. And then eventually we'll build up for the mid game. By the time you're around level 20 to 25, you can actually start tackling Draugr and Dwemer ruins. They're going to be significantly harder, but they're going to give you a lot of EXP. They're going to be a lot of fun to take down, and I'll probably be showing lots of gameplay of us taking on those sort of mid-level dungeons. Now, the amazing thing about unarmed is really just how powerful we become because we have so many perks that scale with unarmed damage, and we're able to amp it up later on with enchantments. So I'm going to show you guys what the late game picture looks like for the unarmed, just so you have a general idea of how we're going to progress equipment wise. Alright, so we overleveled a little bit, but I'm going to be showing you guys what the progression is going to be now from level 16 until level 25. Level 25 is when you can finally get 75 expert level into any of your skills, and that is really kind of a big turning point for the build because we are going to get access to combat reflexes, which is a super powerful ability. So basically at level 16, 17, and 18, that's when we're going to start taking these light armor perks. So we're going to take dodge, we're going to take light armor training, and then we're going to take vexing flanker. And that's going to make it so at level 75, we will get access to combat reflexes. Alright, at level 19, we're going to go back into the one-handed tree, and we're finally going to take Weapon Mastery 2. This is going to give us an additional 20% damage to our fists, which is going to greatly bolster how much damage we can do. Takedown is pretty nice, and unarmed defense is also really good as well, but again, our priority, at this point we already have enough damage from one-handed, so we don't need to prioritize anything else from there. We do want to take powerful bashes around level 20. Power bashing, super strong to have. Honestly, you might want to take this earlier because power bashing is just that powerful against melee enemies, but it's also not very useful against enemies that don't fight you in melee. So once we take that, we can go back into evasion, 21, take dexterity. This is going to give us reduced stamina cost for our power attacks, which is very nice to have. And then 22 and 23 is what we're going to take into alchemy. So we at this point have been kind of relying upon potions that we just get from loot, from killing bandits, from clearing dungeons, and they are plentiful. So I actually think you don't really need much alchemy up until this point, but once you're starting to fight stronger enemies, you're going to need magic resist, you're going to need increases to your damage bonuses and damage mitigation. That's when we are going to actually start taking alchemy skills. So level 22 and 23, that is when we're going to finally want to go into alchemy. At this point, we're taking on enemies such as enemy mages, maybe even some of the early game dragon priests if we really want to, but these enemies we're going to require potions of magic resistance for, and that is a much harder resource, a very expensive resource to buy too. Up until this point, we've been able to kind of scavenge our way into healing supplies, any sort of ingredients, crafting ingredients, and just potions in general. You should be able to get those plentiful just from the loot of the dungeons. But now that we need more specific potions, mainly magic resist potions, unarmed potions, fortify potions, those are going to be super helpful for the mid-game combats. We want to get alchemical lore, the first point, so we can craft potions, and then we want improved elixirs so that we can have pretty much the best potions that we can without investing further into the alchemy tree, because really it doesn't get any stronger until purification process, which is going to be way later on. That would be late game once you're level 50 and above. So don't even worry about that. We're taking 2 points to alchemy. 24, we're not spending a perk point. We want to save that for level 25, because once we hit level 25, that is when we will have our evasion up to level 75. We can take combat reflexes, where we have the power to slow time. And this is going to make our combats so much more doable, especially against strong enemies like mages that can cast spells that will just obliterate our health. We can get out of range, we can dodge them, we can move to safety, and then we can get in up close, or maybe even before they cast their spells, we just shred the enemy to pieces because of combat reflexes. Now, additionally, you're going to want to get your alteration to level 75. And we're going to go ahead and take alteration, expert alteration. And with expert alteration, we get a number of fantastic spells. I'll cover kind of a breakdown of what spells I recommend from the alteration tree that you have and that you go out and learn. But we're going to want to take with this level up is going to be Knowledge is Power. This is a spell that's similar to Akato's Recital, where you cast it and then the spell in your left hand is what is activated and is stored by Knowledge is Power. So this will store one spell, non-concentration, in your left hand, and then it gives us a power that we can activate once per day that auto-casts a spell with no cost. Super powerful. If you combine this with Gravity Diamond, you can imprison any high mobility enemy for free once a day. Super powerful. We can also use this with, a number of other spells from the alteration tree. But the second spell that we're going to want to take is going to be Enlarge. Enlarge is going to increase our size by 25%, but it's going to also increase our damage by 10% and reduce physical damage taken by 10%. This is a really substantial boost to our damage 10%, and 10% damage mitigation is also very nice too. It's also just badass, becoming much larger. Finally at this point, level 25. If we really want, we can take on much stronger enemies, things like the Dragon Priests, the larger giants, mammoths, any sort of those big enemies, and being able to enlarge ourselves to be able to do that is just freaking badass on top of everything else. So, taking Enlarge Self and Knowledge is Power. And that is going to sum up the level progression for the build in the early to mid game. Level 25, I would say, is still mid game. It's on the upper end of the mid game, getting towards late game. Now that we have access to, our expert level skills and abilities, the further priorities obviously is going to be getting one-handed up to 100. You want that to be the first skill that you are going to master. One-handed, if we look at the one-handed tree, our capstone is Relentless Onslaught. Basically, each normal attack is going to increase our power attack damage by 10% for 5 seconds and stacks up to 6 times. This is 60% increased damage on our power attacks. Absolutely busted. We destroy Alduin, pre-Sovngarde Alduin, without this buff. So that just shows how strong Unarmed is, that we don't even need to rely on Relentless Onslaught to beat Alduin on the first encounter. And then obviously on the second encounter, by then you should have Relentless Onslaught. And that's going to be what boosts our damage up to take him down in his final form. But we're not going to talk about late game or end game stuff. That is like crazy detailed. It's going to take a lot more effort for me to cover the build on that. But hey, if this video gets enough likes and you guys are actually interested in seeing more content for it, I can invest time to show you guys what the end game picture looks like for this build, because it is going to be very strong and very scary. Up until this point, the gear that we have is going to be plentifully good enough. Of course, going to stores and the vendors and then looking at their enchanted gear is going to help out a lot, because you will need a necklace slot. I do recommend getting Golder's Amulet after level 25. That is quite a difficult quest to take on. You could probably do it before then if you really wanted to, but that's going to be a solid amulet if you can't find one earlier. That's going to give you either Fortify Health, Fortify Magicka, Fortify Stamina, one of those effects that are really useful. And of course, after level 25, around level 40 is when you can get a stat up to 90. That's when you're going to want to invest into enchantment. So I haven't talked about it yet, but enchantment is really strong in Lorerim. If we go enchanting and get all the way up to level 90 enchantment, we get enchantment mastery, which lets us put 2 enchantments onto any piece of gear at 60% strength. So this is really strong. We have to custom enchant our gear most of the time, because unarmed damage, unfortunately, there's no items outside the Brawler's gloves and the gloves of the Horning Fist that are going to give us an increase to our unarmed damage. Unarmed damage is something that we can just enchant onto armor, a ring, a necklace, gloves. So we can fully kit out our gear. I'll actually show you guys what end game is going to more look like, just so you have an idea of what to look forward to. Alright, so we're going to quickly run down the alteration spells that I recommend you guys purchase and then you actually use on your character. These are going to be spells that I use throughout my entire playthrough that gave me a lot of value. So we're going to start off with Bounce. This is going to be a spell at up level that is going to reflect incoming physical damage back at the attacker. When enemies have a bounce spell on them, you will literally one-shot yourself from how much damage this reflects back, and this applies back to the enemies as well. So if you get power attacked by an enemy and you take the full hit, they're going to take the full hit back, and they might honestly just one-shot themselves. It's pretty funny, quite useful, especially against dragons. Very good to have. You know, most of the time you want to not be taking the damage, but in the event that you do take the damage, it's nice to have the reflection. And then we have Disintegrate. This is our main spell to reduce enemy armor. It's going to reduce armor by 276. That's 27.6%, which is very significant. Ebony Flesh, super nice boost to our armor rating. Great to have. We can use this alongside Transmute Muscles on Self from our Kato's Recital, so it's just cast automatically when we start a fight. Or we could have Enlarge Self, which I've already talked about as a great spell to increase our damage and give us damage mitigation. And actually, just to show you how big we get from casting this, let me see if we have a frame of reference here. Jesper, stop singing. He is singing bonus 3 songs. He's trying to get me copyright striked. Alright, so just standing next to Jesper, you can see that's what a normal sized person is. We cast Enlarge, and boom, we are the big mama. We're standing ahead above everybody else. We're actually down slope, so you can't even see how tall we actually are next to him side by side. Yeah, we're that freaking big. Look at that. God damn. Beautiful. So that's Enlarge. And then Featherfall, goated spell. You can fight mammoths, giants with this, and basically, as long as you're not getting one shot, if you're getting yeeted into the air, you don't have to worry about taking fall damage. It's really nice. Also, a lot of dungeons, a lot of areas. It's fun to just jump off the cliff and shortcut into places, get over to other areas really quickly. Fire Shell, Frost Shell, and actually I don't have, no, I do have Shock Shell. You want to get the shield spells. Those are going to be stronger than the shell spells, but you know, for whatever reason I was lazy, so I only have some of the shell spells and some of the shield spells. But you're going to want all the elemental shield spells. These just boost your elemental resist by X amount. It's very high value. Gravity Diamond, this spell is absolutely busted for locking down enemies. Just to showcase to you Gravity Diamond.
Either incredibly prepared, or
that is the Gravity Diamond ability that is going to prevent your targets from moving or running away from you whatsoever. You can lock down a Dragon Priest and then just beat the crap out of them, and there's nothing they can do about it because Gravity Diamond is just so busted. We have the Jump spell, which is going to increase our jump height a substantial amount. It goes great with Featherfall. We increase our base jump height to quite a lot. Nice spell to have for getting around. Knowledge of Power, we already talked about that. This gives us free casting of a spell once per day. And then Kato's Recital, this one's goated. At the moment, with 90 alteration, we can store 2 spells from Kato's Recital. But once you get to level 50 and get 100 alteration, you can store 3 spells with Kato's Recital, and it will reduce the cost of the spells based upon your alteration skill level. So if we have 100 alteration, we're reducing the cost of each spell we're casting from it by 100. They get auto cast and the reduced cast costs, which is just absolutely crazy. This spell is what makes alteration just so freaking amazing. And then last but not least, we got Transmute Muscles. At 90 alteration, Transmute Muscles giving us 40 health, and it's increasing our unarmed damage by 20, which is significant. It is a big boost to our damage. These are the spells I recommend taking, and they're all awesome. Alright, so let's go over our late game equipment. So we're going to be using the Shield of Solitude. This is best in slot, light armor shield. You get this from doing the Wolf Queen questline, and it's going to be a shield that gives 30% magic resist and 35% block buff. So this is ridiculously good. It's going to be difficult to make or enchant a shield that's better than these benefits that we get out of it. 30% is just an absolutely huge amount. We can easily get to the magic resistance cap because of the shield. Next up, The ring slot is going to be flexible. We have a variety of different items, but you're going to see I have 2 custom enchanted ones. One is going to be custom enchanted for shock and fire resistance, because our frost resistance is very high, but our shock and fire resistance is not. And then the other one is going to be for unarmed strike damage and alteration spell cost reduction, which you're going to see quite a lot of. Basically, once we get our enchantment to 90 and we can dump 2 enchantments on an item, we're going to prioritize these 2 enchantments for multiple pieces, and that's going to scale up our damage quite a bit. Taking the Gauntlets of the Horny Fist for additional unarmed damage on hits, still very solid at this level. Then we have the Orcish Berserk Boots that have a Stamina and 2 enchantment and the Unarmed Strike bonus damage enchantment. For our Circlet, we have the Magical Rank 2 enchantment and then Alteration spell cost reduction enchantment. Best in slot for our chest piece, at least until we get 100 enchanting and we can triple enchant a chest piece, is going to be Savior's Hide. Now, Savior's Hide is going to give us 20% magic resistance, as well as a nice chunk to poison and disease resistance as well. And then for our necklace, best in slot would probably be Golder's Amulet at this point, but we're going to custom enchant. We have our own necklace that's going to give us bonus unarmed strike damage and alteration spell cost reduction. So all of these are going to be some big stat boost to us in total. All right, so here are our buffs. We are a devotee of Hercene, which honestly, it doesn't give us much in the late game. This only works against living creatures, so it's not that powerful. I would recommend Devotee of Malakath if you want to get a really good buff for extra damage. Being a Devotee of Malakath is going to give you a huge buff to your power attack damage. Really strong. Honestly, we don't even need it. We're strong enough as is. We got lots of magic resist from our items. We got lots of fortify unarmed. And overall, yeah, we're going to be just really solid. This build is pretty tanky. Tons of damage and lots of ways to get around with our mobility. We're going to be very fast, and we're also going to have, of course, access to combat reflexes. So we don't have to rely on the slow time shout. We can use the slow time shout, but we're a lot less reliant on the slow time shout, so we can use that on other sorts of combat-based shouts, like the ones that's going to increase our attack speed, or AoE ones for damage, since we lack AoE. All throughout the entirety of the game, this is going to be a very solid build to play, and I'm really excited for you guys to try it out and check it out and enjoy it. If you found this build helpful, please let me know in the comments. And yeah, if there's enough support for it, I'll make a late game and end game build for this, following up on how we actually tackle Dragonborn DLC and beyond that, because there are some pretty crazy high level fights that we can manage in Lorerim. But yeah, that's going to be it for the video, so hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, it helps the channel, support the channel. There is going to be more Skyrim content here and there, but of course I am also pretty obsessed with Daggerheart, so I'm going to try to be making some content for that as well. But yeah, that's going to surmise it for the video. I'll probably show some gameplay of us using the unarmed build throughout various points, you know, fighting some Dwemer, fighting some dragons, fighting some other sorts of powerful enemies. It really is a strong build. Damage wise, we do insane damage. So late game, we are looking at 241 damage on our fists, which is more than the great swords, these big weapons, two-handed weapons that people are wielding. This is an insane amount because we can spam rapid attacks with power attack. This is an insane amount of damage because we can spam left click and right click to do our fury of attacks, multiple powerful attacks at the same time. It's going to chunk down enemies. It's going to obliterate all of the powerful enemies in the game. And yeah, you shouldn't have any problems damage wise. It's really just a matter of surviving and staying alive in fights and dealing with swarms of enemies. Those are going to be where the build is on the weaker side. But even still, it's going to be a lot of fun to play. So hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next